Welcome to the Troy Perry Podcast. And here's your host, Troy Perry.
Hey, what's up? Troy here. This is the Troy Perry Podcast, Episode 2, Wrestlemania 2000. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why this WrestleMania to begin with? Well, if you look in the research, you go through the numbers all the way up to WrestleMania 15. Then after that, it goes WrestleMania 17. Now, what happened to WrestleMania 16? Well, for some random reason, they decided to make WrestleMania 16 WrestleMania 2000, which I guess was the whole Y2K thing at the time. But anyway, let's just get straight into the event. It was held in Anaheim, California. It's sat 19,776 people. Now, this particular event received plenty of negative feedback. Like, it went down as possibly the worst WrestleMania in history. There was numerous factors why that was. First of all, it was known that there was a lot of stalling at the event in terms of wrestlers just like taking their time in sleeper holds or outside brawling and during matches. Like, just a lot of stuff where there was plenty of stalling and that the crowd and people watching could get bored pretty quickly. As well as another bad thing that came with that event is that they didn't have any one-on-one matches apart from the women's match that only went for a couple of minutes. So I'm not sure if it was due to time constraints or possibly they just wanted to fit everyone on the card, because back here the event would only go for about 3 hours. I think shortly after that, WrestleManias would go for about 4 or 5 hours. But this particular one, it just scraped over 3 hours. But anyway, so the first match on the card was The Godfather and D'Lo Brown versus the Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan. Now with this, first of all, with Godfather and D'Lo Brown, Godfather's whole image and gimmick was him being a pimp. D'Lo Brown at the time came out as a pimp as well. I believe it was only a short amount of time that they were a tag team. But yeah, they were dressed as pimps. They were accompanied by hoes, basically, or a bunch of attractive women just wearing skimpy outfits, as well as, you might know him as, well, an actor now, but basically back in the day he was a rapper. Ice-T came out rapping for their entrance. So he was also pimped out, and I believe it was like red velvet sort of gear. But anyway, it was a pretty cool first entrance to occur for the event. And and Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan, well, they were dressed in all black, sort of like, looked like federal police sort of gear, like they were wearing vests and stuff. Like, basically, think of what the Shield wore when they were at their prime. That's what they were wearing, basically. So, I guess the original Shield, I guess you can look at it that way. But anyway, the match ended with Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan winning, with Bull Buchanan dropping a top rope leg drop on D'Lo Brown. The match went for 9 minutes and 2 seconds. I guess it was good as it can be, considering the technical ability of those guys. But yeah, the match was it was played below average. Like, I'd probably give it 1.5 stars. Just because obviously, with how the events are now, basically the first event has to be a pretty good match. So for that to open the show, it was a bit lackluster. The next match was the Hardcore Battle Royal, they called it. Basically, at the time, the Hardcore title was defended 24/7 by Crash Holly. Now, with the stipulation of this match, anyone could enter this Hardcore Battle Royal. It basically had a 15-minute time limit, and it came with many title changes during this match, because basically the concept was you just had to pin whoever the champion was, and whoever was the champion at the end of 15 minutes would be at least the champion till the next night on Raw. So the title changed, what it looks like, 8 times during this match. There was about 15 guys involved. You had Kai Tai, you had Meat Street Posse, you had Taz when he first came into WWF. You had Hardcore Holly, Crash Holly. Now, what happened at the end of this match, basically in the last minute, Taz was the champion. He then lost the title to Crash Holly. And then it looked like he was about to lose it again to Crash Holly looks like he was about to lose it to Taz when he had him that Taz chokehold. And then basically what happened was, it's hard to say, like, I tried to find research on this, but basically what happened was Hardcore Holly then interfered in the hold and then was able to pin Crash with like a second to go. Now what it looked like while watching it is that it looked like it was a complete botch on the referee's part, because it looked like basically he counted the 1, he counted the 2, and then he got to the 3 count and he sort of looked like he wasn't supposed to count it because he tried to look like originally change it so it wasn't a 3 count, but obviously with the time, so it looked like basically that it was a basic 3 count and it shouldn't have been. So Hardcore Holly won the belt, and it looked like the others were a bit complex as to what was supposed to happen, like the ref, Crash Holly. They looked like they were genuinely upset, so I don't think that was supposed to go down how it went. So yeah, Crash Holly ended up losing the belt to Hardcore Holly in that last second. And the only reason why I also think that it might have been a botch is the fact that the very next night on Raw, Hardcore Holly lost the belt to Crash Holly, and then that was it. So, so obviously it went for 15 minutes. Hardcore Holly won the match. Madness everywhere. There was even a good moment where the tag team of Kai and Tai, Funaki won the belt, and then Takumi Shinoku was just like, nah, I'm getting this belt. He started attacking him randomly, so the crowd popped for that, so that was pretty cool to see. Standard hardcore sort of match, so 1.5 stars out of 5 sounds about right. The next match was the group known as TNA, which stands for many things these days, but TNA here stands for Test and Albert, and they were accompanied by Trish Stratus, because, well, they basically gave her the moniker that she is TNA, so of course I don't need to tell you guys what that's supposed to mean. But they were versing the random tag team combination of Al Snow and Steve Blackman, and the team at the time was known as Head Cheese. Head because Al Snow was all about rocking the mannequin head and shaking it up and down. That was his sort of gimmick. While for some reason Steve Blackman received the nickname Cheese, and I'm not sure whether that was from Al Snow or the crowd. I don't remember exactly what happened there, but basically he was the sort of guy that never smiled, so maybe that's why they called him Cheese, like calling a big man tiny sort of thing. But anyway, obviously, at the time, Head Cheese were the good guys, TNA were the bad guys. TNA won the match in 7 minutes and 3 seconds. I'll give that match 2 stars out of 5. The end of it was pretty cool. Basically, with Head Cheese, they had a mascot at ringside. He was a shortish Mexican guy, and he was dressed as like a big cheese, basically. And then what happened was he ended up getting attacked randomly by both Steve Blackman and Al Snow, and the crowd hated on it. They booed, and yeah, I guess at that very time, that was good enough for them to be the bad guys after that match. So yeah, shortly after that that occurrence, they end up being the bad guys. The next match, it was the start of a revolution or evolution, whatever you want to call it, because basically from this match, they were able to produce table, ladders, and chair matches, and now they do a regular yearly event called TLC, which stands for Tables, Ladders, and Chairs. It was, at the time, it was called a ladder match, and it was about these 3 tag teams that set the bar, set the standard of what you need to do, what it takes to make a great ladder match. And that was Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys, Bubba Ray and Devon, and the Hardy Boys, Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy. I would give this match of the night. I would give it probably 4 out of 5. It was just great. Like, yeah, it went for 22 minutes and 36 seconds. A few great spots on this event. You had Jeff Hardy do a swanton bomb from the top of a ladder onto Bubba Ray, and they both looked quite unconscious after it. The other good spot was, I believe, Edge giving the spear to, I believe it was Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy was hanging on to the top, and then Edge gave him a good old spear to bring him back down. And the last great spot was they ended up setting up a table to go along the ladders so people can use the table as a platform and then grab the ladders that were hooked up above the ring. Matt Hardy had his hands on both belts, and Edge and Christian were able to climb up the ladders and push him right off. And he fell right onto another table that smashed into pieces. Like, it looked pretty good on camera anyway. So Edge and Christian won that match. So basically that started the whole TLC concept after this match. Like, later on that year, they ended up doing actual proper TLC match is what they called it. And yeah, that's the start of how TLC was born, was basically off this ladder match that a lot of people have forgotten about, because it's not called a TLC match here, it's called a ladder match. So that's why people have forgotten it in history in terms of how the TLC concept sort of started, is basically off this match and off these competitors. The next match was the ladies match I was saying about, the one-on-one match between Terry and the Cat. These ladies were not known for their wrestling abilities. It was definitely for the eye candy entertainment value. Terry had Fabulous Moolah by ringside, and the Cat had Mae Young by ringside. And if you don't know Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young, I believe at the time, both ladies were in the late 70s, 80s. So, yeah, WWF at the time was so keen to get them involved. So, the match only lasted 2 minutes and 26 seconds. Terry got the win. Also, with this match, Val Venus was the random guest referee. The whole Val Venus gimmick was pretty cool for the Attitude Era. Like, basically, it was just him being a porn star. Basically, that was his character, and it lasted a good few years. But yeah, he was the guest referee for the match, and it just ended with basically Kat and Mae Young getting upset with the ruling, getting upset with just what happened in the match. So Mae Young delivered a Bronco Buster to Fabulous Moolah, and Kat stripped Terry down to bare minimum, basically. So yeah, so that's how that match ended. The next match was China and the tag team of Too Cool against the Radicals, which consisted of Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, and Perry Sutton. There's not much you could say about this match. Like, it wasn't great. The storyline behind it was Eddie Guerrero constantly hitting on China, and he was just keen on her, and her concept was to be disgusted by him constantly. But anyway, with the match itself, it went for 9 minutes 37. It was very average. Like, yeah, it was 2 stars out of 5 for that one. It ended with Too Cool getting a dance on with China. Radicals at the time, they came from WCW, and they'll probably, this match was probably a reason why the card might have been so cramped together, because the Radicals only joined the WWF like in February that year, and yeah, they would have been shoved, because usually when they set up WrestleManias, they set it up with like months and months in advance, like maybe 6 months in advance they'll have storylines organized. So the fact that they had this bunch of guys from WCW called the Radicals join, and when they joined, it was very last minute. Like, they just left WCW with, like, they weren't free agents, they weren't off contract. They basically asked for their release, and they got them. So it was a big ballsy move for their career, but they felt it was right to do so. And at the time, WCW did seem like the sinking ship, and a year later, they worked out that, yeah, that was the right decision when WCW folded. So That was the backstory behind those guys at the time. The next match involved the fourth member of the Radicals. This match was a triple threat match. It was between Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, and Kurt Angle. At the time, Kurt Angle held both the Intercontinental title as well as the European title. And this match was scheduled for 2 falls. The winner of the first fall would be Intercontinental Champion, and the winner of the second fall would be the European Champion. This match was only given 13 minutes and 36 seconds. Still a pretty good match. I'd give it 3.5 out of 5. Just wish they would have been given more time, basically, on the card. Like, if they got a good 20 to 25 minutes, they probably would have stole the show. Okay, so with that match, Benoit won the first fall, so he became IC champion. And then the next fall, Chris Jericho became European champion. Now, in both those falls, it was Benoit beating Jericho and then Jericho beating Benoit. So the fact that Kurt Angle lost both belts without actually losing a fall was pretty... he was pretty dirty about it, let's just say that. And you could tell by the aftermath of the match where he's just yelling at everyone. And yeah, it was classic crybaby Kurt Angle's MO at the time. Next match, it was Kane and Rikishi, with Kane being accompanied by Paul Bearer, and they went up against 2 members of Degeneration X. The 2 members at the time were Road Dogg and X-Pac. I believe Billy Gunn was injured at the time, so that's why I guess he wasn't there to be seen. It was a pretty short match. It was pretty much a dud. I'd give it 1.5 stars. Kane Rikishi got the win. It also involved an appearance by Pete Rose, and Pete Rose ended up getting chokeslammed by Kane. Then Rikishi got his dance on, too cool, came out to the ring, and then Kane was just looking at them, and yeah, Kane's serious character, serious individual, so him watching people dance was not a regular thing to see, so only at WrestleMania. Now, finally, the main event. It was a fatal 4-way for the WWF Championship. It involved Triple H, The Rock, Mick Foley, or you might know him as Mankind, and you might know him as Giant, but his name is The Big Show here. This was a fatal 4-way for the WWF title. The story behind this was there was a McMahon in each corner. So Triple H had his wife, Stephanie McMahon Helmsley, by his side. The Rock had Vince McMahon. Mick Foley had Linda McMahon. And Big Show had Shane McMahon. It was an elimination match, so it was definitely going to get the most time on the card. It ended up getting 36 minutes and 24 seconds. The match started off with Big Show dominating them all, like individually. Like there was like boots everywhere, chops, like knife edge chops everywhere. Like he was just crushing them. And then one point in the match, it got to where Triple H, Rock, and Mick Foley decided to team up together. And then, yeah, Big Show didn't last too much longer after that. So he ended up getting defeated by the Rock Bottom, I believe. Yep, Rock Bottom. The next to go was then Mick Foley. Mick Foley and The Rock worked together briefly, trying to work on Triple H. But Triple H was able to get an advantage on both of them a couple times during the exchanges, and then Triple H ended up pinning Mick Foley due to landing his pedigree on a steel chair. And then the last matchup, like the last exchange, was between Triple H and The Rock. A lot of things were happening during this match, like McMahon, like for instance, Big Show got eliminated, so Shane left. Shane came back and started attacking Vince, and then Vince got bloodied up a little bit on his forehead, and then he ends up giving another crack and basically whipping Shane, and then then Shane ran off. And then what ended up happening was pretty weird. Was at the end, it looked like The Rock was going to get the win, and then Vince decided to screw The Rock over, hit him with a steel chair, and then obviously that's where the crowd was like, "Oh my god, Why did Vince do that to The Rock? Why? And then Triple H tried to pin The Rock. Rock somehow kicked out still. And then Vince had that angry look on his face and then hit another steel chair onto The Rock's head. And Triple H went for the pin again. 1, 2, 3. And that's how that match ended. So another historic thing and historic fact when it comes to WrestleMania is that this WrestleMania was the start of, for the first time ever, the bad guy / heel would win the main event. Or even hold the top, like basically retain the title. Now, no one expected this because obviously it never happened before. And then, what's it been? It's been like nearly 20 WrestleManias later. And it's happened maybe 4 or 5 times. At the top of my head, I know that The Miz did it. I think Triple H did it again. And I know there's another one that I can't think of at the time. But yeah, there's 4 or 5 times this has occurred. And then after this particular event, the next pay-per-view is Backlash. And then that's when you might see some video memes online about how where you see the meme of Stone Cold Steve Austin hitting everyone with a chair. And that was at this particular next pay-per-view, which was called Backlash. Basically, I believe Stone Cold was injured at the time, so he was on the shelf. So that's why you didn't see him in any capacity in this event. But then the very next month, obviously, he screwed over Triple H and the McMahons and The Rock ended up being the world champion. But that just ended up being what the aftermath was of the event. And also, while we are on this subject, I thought we'd also talk about WF WrestleMania 2000, the video game. Now, with the video game, it came out 5 months prior. I believe it was 5 months prior. So it was originally released in 1999. It was called WrestleMania 2000. Basically, with the actual pay-per-view, it was a little bit outdated. Like, it was called WrestleMania 2000. However, if you played the WrestleMania stage in the game, it's actually WrestleMania 15, the set for. But yeah, on the cover, you got Big Show, Mick Foley, The Rock, Triple H, and Undertaker. What happened was it got... this was the first WWF game released by THQ, because THQ ended up parting ways from WCW making those WCW games. So you will always hear that the very best WCW game was WCW NWO Revenge. But yeah, that was the very last game they did. And then they came over to do WWF games. And then after that, WrestleMania 2000, a very underrated game. Pretty awesome. You could unlock... basically, there's like, I believe there was 40 wrestlers in the game. You can unlock other wrestlers by playing their story mode, which is called the Road to WrestleMania. Even though they're unlockable characters, but only like managers or the commentators. But you were able to unlock Shawn Michaels, who wasn't active at the time, so it was pretty cool to be able to get him in the game. But yeah, I thought I'd so other than that, after WrestleMania 2000, you end up getting WWF No Mercy, and that's pretty much known as either the best wrestling game ever, if you have that next to SmackDown versus Raw or SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. It's pretty close between them top 3, but yeah, that was I remember having that game on my Nintendo 64 and basically loved every minute of it. So anyway, that's the end of this podcast. Hope you enjoyed episode 2, WrestleMania 2000. You can also follow me on social media, either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Or you could also now listen to this podcast through the Anchor platform. You can also listen to it on Spotify and Google Podcast. And hopefully other future podcast platforms down the road. But thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Troy Perry Podcast.